Well, hey, good morning, it's Rob, and of course we all saw and remember the sad and terrible events of January 6th, where a mob, came down to the Capitol in Washington to try to keep Trump in power. They were trying to prevent the joint session of Congress from counting the electoral votes and formalizing the victory of President-elect Joe Biden. But as frightening and as awful as that day was in the history of our country, I'm here today to talk about the fake elector scheme, which was related to January 6th, but also something I believe was even more sinister, more damaging, and ultimately I think something that, should be prosecuted, and that the people who are involved in the fake elector scheme in multiple states, just like the people who were involved in January 6th, where more than 1,000 people have already gone to jail for their participation in that event. I think the people that signed the fake elector documents are equally as guilty. Matter of fact, I think they are even more guilty than people involved in the January 6th insurrection, and I'll tell you why right now. I've made other videos about this topic, and I have a personal angle in discussing these matters, because I went to college, and for a time I was friends with Sean Maddock, who is one of the people who signed the fake elector documents, who was recently arraigned in Michigan. She pled not guilty along with the other 16 fake electors who signed the document that was transmitted to the National Archives. They claimed they were the Trump electors and that they were doing their civic duty and all the things that they're claiming and saying they're not guilty for. But she was there. She signed the document. Matter of fact, she was the co-chairman of the Republican Party, so it's really hard to deny that she kind of would have had some idea of what she was getting involved in, because she was in charge of the Republican Party in the state of Michigan. She's married to a guy named Matt Maddock, and he is a very conservative Republican member of the House of Representatives in Michigan. And they are both front and center in this video I'm about to show you here, which every time I watch this, I am just shocked. I'm just shocked by the sight of them in this video, and just listening to the things they say and the way they are trying to gain access to the Capitol to, go in and participate in the, election of the next president of the United States, a fair election that was, clearly won by somebody else, not their candidate. And here they are at the gates of the Michigan Capitol, trying to persuade a police officer to let them in to participate and to cast their votes for Donald Trump. It's just nuts. Let's take a look at this video, and I'm going to jump in it a few times and just give my thoughts on it.
What did he say?
He said we can't enter. What I said was, for the Capitol Commission, for the governor's office, for the Speaker of the House, for the Speaker of the Senate, the Capitol is closed unless you have an office here to conduct business today, or if you are taking part in the Electoral College process. Anybody else is not permitted to come in the Capitol.
They're here for electors.
Yeah, the electors are already here. They've been checked in.
So that's a guy named Commander Green, I believe, the police officer with the mask, who is denying them entry to the Capitol building. Let's back up a minute here and let's talk about what their plan actually was, what they did, and what got them in front of Commander Green on this day, which thankfully was captured on video, even though there's like lawn, maintenance going on in the background. The sound is terrible, but you can hear what they say, even though he's got a mask on, which makes it more difficult. So basically, I'll zoom through the fake elector scheme, which was orchestrated, of course, by, the Trump administration and by his lawyers, John Eastman, some other people. And they basically thought if they had these groups of people who would stand in and say they were, the real electors and sign a piece of paper, that claimed, that they were legitimately chosen as the state's electors, and they would take this piece of paper and they transmitted it to the National Archives, and which would register the document and make it, in their eyes, legitimate. And then they would have these alternate slates of electors that would then be able to go in and replace the legitimate state electors who were choosing Biden in these states that were close, in these states that they claimed there was voter fraud and dead people voting and all that kind of stuff. And so this alternate document would exist, and this alternate group of electors would just be able to swoop in and replace the legitimately picked electors for the President of the United States, which of course is currently Joe Biden. Now, if you don't remember your middle school civics lessons, basically electors are people that are chosen to elect the president. And once the popular vote is tallied up, sometimes the popular vote even picks a different president. But in any case, however, it's all apportioned and set up. At some point, it is determined who the winner is of the election. And when they determine the winner, they take that group of electors and they bring them into the Capitol. They count their votes. They cast their votes. They count the votes, and that's how the president is chosen. So, Michonne Maddox's claim is that she was one of the Trump electors. Now that, may be all well and good, but we weren't using the Trump electors. They weren't the people that were supposed to show up at the Capitol and cast their votes because their guy didn't win. So, thankfully, this man here, which I believe his name is Commander Green, stood at the door. He was a gatekeeper, just like Mike Pence was the gatekeeper, and said, I can't do this stuff. It's not legal. It's not constitutional. I can't just say I'm going to pick a different group of electors and bring them in and they're going to pick the president. You have to have the group of electors from the guy who actually won. That's what happened here, thankfully. But in any case, their plan was actually, they had an inside man. They had a guy, I don't remember if he was a state representative or somebody who had access to the Capitol building, and this group of fake electors who met in secret in the basement of the Republican headquarters in Michigan, and they signed this document saying they were the real electors, and then they transmitted this document to the National Archives. Their plan was to get it access to the Capitol, this group of 16 people, and sleep in this person's office overnight. And then at 2 o'clock, when the votes were being tallied for the real electors, they would walk down the hall and join the proceedings and cast their votes for Trump, which would have been, of course, total chaos, nonsensical, would not make any sense because that's not how it works at all. But that was indeed their plan until somebody, I think it was one of the people in the group, finally said, yeah, this isn't a good idea at all. I mean, basically, they're just making up the rules of government as they go along, as they see befits them, and that's not a thing you can do. Beyond that, the felonies they actually committed are that they signed this form saying that they were the real chosen electors for the state of Michigan, and that they met, they convened at the Capitol building where they have to meet and convene to sign this form. They said they met at the Capitol building, which they did not. They met in the basement of the Republican Party headquarters. And then the other felony is transmitting this document to the National Archives, which is supposed to register this document as the real and true document, signed by the people who are going to pick the next president of the United States. And again, they were not those people. So thankfully, this officer here said, hey, the electors have already been, sworn in. They're already inside the building, and they're not you. Now, you hear my friend Michonne, her husband Matt Maddox, and the other people in the crowd say, but we're also electors. We're also real electors. I mean, I can say I am also, the greatest, guitar player in the world. Me and Jimi Hendrix and Eric Clapton. I can say I am also that. And believe me, I would love to be that, but clearly I'm not that. All right, I'm going to continue on in the video here.
They're also electors.
Capitol's closed. All 16 electors that we've been advised by the governor's staff that we're going to be here to vote in the Electoral College have been checked in. They're already here.
But these are the rest of the electors.
I understand. But the Capitol is closed. Everybody has permission.
Captain, the electors are also, the GOP electors are also on the governor's certificate of ascertainment.
I'm not going to get into a political debate. I'm following
It's not a
orders.
political debate.
Okay.
It's the official sealed document. The certificate of ascertainment has also the GOP electors. They are here. They're trying to do their constitutional duty.
I understand.
And their constitutional duty requires them to be at the Senate chamber today at 2 p.m.
Okay.
They're here.
All right, they're not. I understand they're not being permitted in.
This is their lawyer that walked up to speak to Commander Green after to say that these are also the GOP electors and they're also a part of the process. They have an official sealed document that has been transmitted to the Capitol building or the National Archives or wherever they sent this document, and that they are also part of this process and they also need to come in to cast their votes. Again, not how the Electoral College works. This is not how it works at all. But they're out there trying to get in. They're not busting the doors down. They're not screaming and yelling. They're simply trying to use political trickery. They are forging documents. They are lying, straight out lying, saying that they did things and participated in political processes that they did not participate in. And this is why I feel like these guys are even worse than the January 6th insurrection and the people who were involved in storming the Capitol, because those people didn't really have a specific agenda. They just wanted to storm the Capitol and break a bunch of stuff and, steal Nancy Pelosi's podium and run around with Viking horns on and just cause mayhem and destruction and to delay the proceedings that were happening that day, which they were successful in. But 2 hours later, they all convened again and they still picked Joe Biden as the president. So their efforts, and which of course led to the death of someone named Ashley Babbitt, as well as the trauma that they caused for the Capitol Police. Ultimately, one of them, or a couple of them, killed themselves or died as a result of maybe injuries or situations that happened on January 6th. So it was a terrible and brutal day with serious consequences. But even putting all that aside, the January 6th insurrection, like I said, was just an angry mob of people who just, for the most part, didn't have a specific agenda. They were just mad. Trump had riled them up, and they just came down there to bust up and mess up people and, hit police officers over the head with, fire extinguishers, which, is what you do when, your guy doesn't win. You go to, bash someone's head in. So, as crazy and awful and terrible as that was, what I'm saying here in this video is these people involved in the fake electors scheme, specifically this scheme in Michigan, and the people in Michigan are even worse off because the 16 people that signed a form that didn't have a disclaimer on the bottom. Some of the other states did have a disclaimer, and the disclaimer said, look, we know we're not the actual state electors, but if it's determined in the future that Trump actually won, then this form exists just as a record that there is another group of electors that can come in and choose Trump in this state. We're standing by, we're ready, like the Proud Boys standing by, stand back and stand by, whatever it was that Trump said. And that happened in some of the states. In Michigan, I don't think it said that at all. There was no disclaimer. Michigan, I think, was one of the early states where the fake electors convened and tried to do what they do, that you just saw in this video. And so their statement looks exactly like the statement that the real electors signed. It's just that it has different names, and it's all people that wanted to vote for Trump. We're the Trump electors, That's not a thing. So that's why these people are being brought up on charges. My old friend Michonne was arraigned, and I think her trial's in October. They said they have to look at all this different evidence. She is claiming she is innocent. She's also claimed in the past that, you know, this was orchestrated by Trump, that she was just doing the bidding of her president who put her up to this and asked her to get together and sign these forms. Well, the people in the January 6th insurrection were also doing the bidding of Trump. Come on, he orchestrated, he whipped this crowd up in a frenzy, and he said, let's all go down to the Capitol. You know, I'm not going to join you, I'm going to have some hamburgers and, you know, watch from a, you know, safe location. But you guys go over there and, you know, see what you can get accomplished. So anyway, I'll wrap it up here, but just to say that this, at least in Michigan, fake elector trial is ongoing, and we're going to see what happens with that. I don't wish my ex-friend any ill will, and, you know, I wouldn't like to see her go to prison. But do I think she deserves some prison time along with the 15 other people that signed that form? I think, you know, it's a serious consideration.
We have a copy of paperwork that was prepared as electors under their constitutional duty. Can I speak to the Sergeant of Arms of the Senate to deliver it to the chamber today?
He's in a meeting right now with the Electoral College. He's not available to meet.